Hey everybody, so the Eastern split at the CNPL just ended. We're going to go over all of it. Some teams had some new rosters, some teams performed really well, some teams not so well. So let's get right into it. Episode 11, Pickleball Diaries. Here we go.
Oh, what a shot.
All right, so let's get right into it. So the first game on day one on court one, which was the mainstream, which was on the CNPL YouTube channel. Now they did have court two streaming with no commentary on the JYT network, which is the guys who do all like the photos and stuff like that. So I focused on mostly the court one matchups. I did go over and do more of a speed watch of the games on court two. There were some really good games on that court as well. But just to kind of get into more of the full experience of how CNPL is going to be showcasing this, you had commentary, you had guests come up and do interviews and stuff like that. So it was a little bit more entertaining wise in that way to give you something extra other than just the pickleball you were watching. So yeah, so the first game on that court was Montreal Lions versus the Toronto United team. And so Montreal had a roster change from since the draft. They now have Cam Rich on the team. One of the previous players. It looks like they're pulled out. They're not even listed on the roster anymore. So Cam Rich is has come in. I've seen Cam play. He actually played a few games with Irene at the play-ins in Vernon. He's a really good player. So he was on the Montreal Lions with Kim, Grace, and Eric, and Eric's the owner of the team. So the first game was the women's matchup. You had Kim and Grace versus Hannah and Martina. The score ended with a 15-11 win for Montreal. The match went back and forth pretty well, but it seemed like Kim and Grace were able to keep themselves more poised throughout the match. They didn't let the little mistakes get to them as much as it seemed like Hannah and Martina. Now, take it for granted, this is the first game of this league, so a lot of the teams were showing jitters on all the teams. Um, but it seemed to be that Kim and Grace were able to reel themselves in and lock it in a little bit quicker. The second match was the men's, where Cam and Eric took out Daniel, who subbed in for his brother Mark, and Matt Quanamoto. They beat them 15-8, and you could tell Cam and Eric were really focusing on picking on Daniel throughout the match, driving it at him with drives and with speed ups. And yeah, Daniel and Matt just couldn't seem to get it going, and that match ended with a 15-8 score. So then we moved on to the first mixed one. So it was Matt and Hannah versus Cam and Kim, and Matt and Hannah ended up pulling out the 15-14 win. This was a really close game, really competitive. Cam and Kim have played together before, but Matt and Hannah, I don't think have. But they're both very, very good players. Matt is actually the highest rated player in Canada right now. I believe, at least that's what the commentary was saying. So that game was really even. And then yeah, Matt and Hannah pulled out the 15-4 win. So then the final game was Eric and Grace versus Daniel and Martina, and Eric and Grace at one point had a 14-7 lead, and Daniel Martina managed to battle back to bring it to 14-14, but Eric and Grace did pull out the win. One thing to note about with the rally scoring in this league is that once you get to 14, your score freezes. So it actually adds more pressure, and it's a great equalizer for the team that's down to come back, because if you're at 14 and you make a mistake, the other team still gets a point, but you have to score on your serve to win the match. Now, and it's the same thing. You only can win by one. So when it's 14-14, if you score on your serve, the match is over. So yeah, so Montreal ended up winning that overall matchup 3-1. So that was a good start to the tournament. All right, the second match on court one was the West Coast Wolverines versus the Northern Rollers. So the West Coast Wolverines, if you watched or listened to the last podcast I did on the CNPL on the draft, I have these guys picked as one of the top teams, just on the basis of the fact that you have Joel and Haddo as the men's, and they've played together multiple times, and they're both very, very good players. And then they have the number one draft pick with Angie Walker, and then even Vicky, who was the last pick in the draft, she's no slouch either, and she's very, very good defensively. So starting off that match, you had Angie and Vicky versus Emma and Jessica. Now, Emma is the youngest player in this league. She's 18, and then you have Jessica Kwamoto, who's actually Matt's sibling from the Toronto United team. Both very, very good players. Um, this match went to 15-13 for the Wolverines. The West Coast team of Angie and Vicky, they looked more in control, but they looked a little jittery to start because once again this was the first game of the day for them, and a few little mental mistakes, a few little miscues where looked like more easy shots that you could put away or at least get back over the net, just went into the net or went out. But they pulled it out with the 15-13 win. The next match with Joel and Hato and then versus Jonas and Corey. Now, Jonas was the number, I think, 8 overall draft pick by the Rollers, that he was their first round, and then Corey is the owner who picked himself in this. Corey's a little bit older; he's up in the 50s, and as much as I think he's a pretty good player, it kind of really showed in this match. That Joel and Hato were picking on him big time. Joel and Hato just seemed to overpower Jonas and Corey. They won this match 15-9, and a few of the points on the 9 were even like because it was a freeze. And this was one of those matches that never looked in doubt. Like Joel and Hato played very, very, very well. They picked on Corey a lot. Jonas tried to get himself into the match, but if anything, he started to overextend himself, and then he was making mistakes as well. So they won 15-9. So then the first mixed match was Angie and Hato versus Jonas and Jessica. And honestly, Angie and Hato just dominated this match. Angie got an ATP on Jonas. They won this match 15-6. This was even more dominant than the men's matchup. This didn't even look close. Same thing. Jonas seemed to be overextending himself. Wasn't really trusting Jessica with the shots. Now this is obviously might be their first time playing together, so it'll take some more communication. They have a bunch more games to go after this, but not a great start for the Rollers. And then the next match for mixed was Joelle and Vicky versus Emma and Corey, and they did win this one 15-13 for the West Coast Wolverines, so they did sweep this the matchup 4-0. Joelle and Vicky had some miscues with their communication because honestly, this match shouldn't have been 15-13. It should have been like same thing, like a 15-8 score. But a few of their miscues, you can tell they haven't played together a lot. This allowed the Rollers to kind of stay in the match. That's no knock against Emma and Corey. Emma was playing really well. They were keeping pace, but once again, the outcome never really looked in doubt. The West Coast team was just way too strong for this Rollers team, and like a 4-0 win to start the match or to start the day. So all right, so the next game on court 1 was was Montreal Lions were back on court 1. This time they were facing the Brewers. So the Brewers team is the team that's owned by the Maple Leafs players. So we've already talked about the Montreal players. So on the Brewers, you got Jeff and Mark, and you got Christina and Susan. So Christina and Mark, as I mentioned in the draft podcast, they play together all the time. So that is a big advantage for this Brewers team, is that one of their mixed pairs plays together regularly in tournaments, so they can read off each other, they can change up stuff on the fly. A lot easier than what some other teams can do. So starting off with the men's, you had Jeff and Mark pull out the win against Cam and Eric. So the Brewers went up 1-0 with that. This was a really even match. It was a lot of back and forth. Mark's got a really good two-hand backhand drive. Jeff seems to have, I don't know if it's a tennis background or a squash background, but he's got some really good overhand shots and really good forehand dinks. Cam and Eric, they didn't pick on Eric as much as when I watched the previous match with the Lions playing, but Cam was working his drives really well, but Jeff and Mark were up to the task, and they pulled out the 15-13 win. Coming up to the women's match, So Kim and Grace for Montreal beat Christina and Susan. Um, Kim and Grace made a very big point to stay away from Christina's forehand. Christina has a very, very good forehand roll shot. It goes deep, it's fast, it doesn't have a lot of bounce after it lands. So they really started to pick on Susan. Susan was holding herself pretty well, but you could see a few times she was getting impatient and was trying to speed up, and she's speeding it up to Kim Layton. You don't want to do that. Kim's a pretty tall woman, so it looks like a big target, but her hands are quick. She makes you pay for it. If anything, they should have focused more on going to Grace. Like even though Grace was holding her own really well, it was a mistake for Susan to keep driving in it. Kim, she did it a few too many times, and Kim just made her pay for it every single time. So Kim and Grace pulled out that one of 15-12. So like I said, still pretty close, but the few mistakes there, and the fact that Kim and Grace tried to stay away from Christina as much as they could was a really good setup for that. Moving on to the mixed. So they went with the what you consider the second grouping for the mixed team. So Jeff and Susan took on Eric and Grace. Jeff and Susan pulled out the 15-13 win with that one. Both women in this one seemed to get a little jittery. They were doing third shot drops into the net, even serve returns into the net on this one. So it was a little bit of who made the least amount of mistakes, at least on the women's for the two women players in this match. And yeah, just Jeff and Susan just made the least amount of mistakes and pulled out the win with that one. So then we moved on to Christina and Mark versus Kim and Cam. This was an insanely good match, super, super even. It came down to a 15-14 win for Christina and Mark. So they did beat Cam and Kim, who have also played together. But at one point, Christina and Mark, they switched sides mid-match and then also switched back because they were actually playing in a way that lined Christina face on with Kim. Christina was playing the left-hand side, which is normally when both players are right-handed, normally the male player takes that. But the other reason why they were doing that is because Mark has such a strong two-handed backhand shot, so he was more than comfortable to take shots in the middle from his backhand. Now, at one point, Cam and Kim caught on to that, and they started to make a run. And then Christina and Mark switched for a little bit to kind of, you could tell it kind of messed them up for a bit, allowed them to catch back up. And then Kim and Cam made a few shots, and then Christina and Mark actually switched back to their original setup with Christina on the left and Mark on the right. So, and then, like I said, super close match. It was 14-14, and then Christina and Mark just ended up pulling out the win. There was lots of good firefights in this one, and this will be a good match to watch. At least with this mixed matchup. And actually, the men's matchup was really, really good too. All right, moving on to the West Coast Wolverines versus the Pronghorns. Now, this was a really, really good match. It's one of the first ones that actually went into the overtime. But we'll start off with the Pronghorns roster change. So they had Ravi playing, and he's an alternate for the team, but their number one draft pick or their number one pick in the first round, Brad Chapman, was away playing in the States at a PPA tournament, so he wasn't available. So they brought in the alternate Ravi, and Ravi played really, really well. But we'll get into that. So first match, Vicky and Angie versus Pam and Kim. Pam and Kim pulled out the win of 15-13 final score. They really picked on Vicky this match. You'd see Angie trying to come in and poach a few and help Vicky out, but I was sitting with Irene while we were watching this, and I said, they should almost call a timeout and maybe switch sides to just change the look for Pam and Kim, because Pam and Kim were just very, very steady. They're both seasoned vets in this, and they just wore them down, especially with the picking on Vicky, so they couldn't. Angie could never get herself going with her forehand. The next match was Joelle and Hato versus Ravi and Maddie. This game was very, very fun to watch. Joel and Hato pulled out the win. And this was just a really great back and forth. Lots of speed ups, a lot of firefights. And if Ravi's the alternate for this team, these Pronghorns are going to do really, really well, because that means they didn't have, like, I can only imagine how good this team is with Brad playing the whole time. So yeah, so the West Coast Wolverines pulled that one out 15-14. So that was a one. So we're at 1-1 then. Next, you had Angie and Haddo versus Ravi and Pam. This game was close up until about the midway point, and then Angie and Haddo started picking on Pam a lot more. They were letting Angie's forehand get going. Haddo was making good shots. They were keeping Pam back, not really letting Ravi get going. And then they pulled out the 15-12 win. Next matchup, Joelle and Vicky versus Kim and Maddie. Kim and Maddie just really picked on Vicky a lot. And then Joel was stepping in to try and help out with that, and then he made a couple mental mistakes with that. Maddie has an insanely good drive. It looks like a two-hand backhand drive. It's very powerful. So yeah, they pulled out a 15-5 win on that one over Joel and Vicky, which forced the overtime, which is for overtime, what they do is they do singles, and each player plays 3 points. So you can kind of decide your lineup ahead of time, whether you're going to go guy on guy, girl on girl, and stuff like that. They basically went guy on guy, girl on girl for the setup. And the Pronghorns definitely have some of the better singles players. Maddie, in particular, he took Joel's lunch money. I think he scored 3 points every time he was on the court against Joel. Haddo did pretty well against Ravi. And then the Pronghorns ended up pulling out an 11-8 win to win the whole matchup 3-2. The final out call from the camera view, I couldn't really tell if it was in or out. There's not like it's slow-mo replay. But like Angie thought her shot was in. I think it was Pam called it out. The refs didn't see it, so they went with the official ruling on that. So it was a little bit of, I don't want to say issues with it, but and like I even tried to rewind a little bit and try to watch it again, and the ball was really close. So you just go with the player's call on that. Another case for going with the tennis route and having sensors on the lines and stuff like that. All right, so the next match we had the Toronto Smash versus the Northern Rollers. So the Toronto Smash, you got Jordan and Leah, and then Dalbier and Chris as the players for this one. This team seemed to be surprising everybody. I know I didn't really give them a ton of props. I said this team would be interesting to watch because both gentlemen are from the West Coast, and then both the women are from the East Coast. This is the one team where it looked like the owners picked the high performers at the actual play-ins. Both Dalbier and Chris played insanely well in Vernon. They were, aside from Chapman and I think Nathan Choi, they were like had the best overall ranking in the play-ins in Vernon. I know Jordan had one of the highest, if not the highest, at the Eastern play-ins. I'm not sure where Leah was, but just because I didn't have that information handy to me, but. This was the team where it just literally looked like the owners looked at the stats and went with those picks, and it seems to turn out really well. The Smash had been playing well all day. They went 4-0 on the day, so yes, they won this match. The women's match, Jordan and Leah won 15-12. Emma and Jessica put up a really good fight. This was actually a really even match, but Jordan and Leah pulled away with it. Jordan's got an insanely strong forehand smash. And actually, I told Irene, I said it reminds me of Irene's forehand smash when Irene hits the ball hard. So maybe a possible. Well, I know Jordan. I heard Jordan's like either like a former squash pro or something, or tennis pro or something like that. But Irene played volleyball, and that's where her power comes from with that. Next, you had Dalbier and Chris versus Corey and Jonas, and it was another 15-12 win for the Smash. It it was 15-12, but it felt like it should have been like 15-7. Few mental mistakes or few little easy misses by the Smash team made it look a lot closer. Like same thing, they picked on Corey again, and once again, this match didn't really feel close. So I don't know if the way this weekend has been going so far. I don't know if the Rollers will want to maybe pick up an alternate, another. They do have two alternates named, but both of those players are in their mid 50s, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Like I know there's 50 players playing in the senior pro leagues and stuff, but when you're playing against a team that I think the oldest person on the team is maybe 31, the Smash have a really really young team and very very athletic, like every single one of them. Um, it's gonna eventually come back to bite you, especially when you're playing like long game, like tough games. Um, but yeah, so 15-12 win on that. Like I said, didn't really feel that close. There was a few mental mistakes by the Smash team that allowed it to get a little bit closer, but realistically, this could have been like a 15-7 game. Next, you had the mixed. You had Jordan and Dalbier versus Corey and Emma. This was actually a 15-14 win for the Smash, but they were up, and then it was the freeze that allowed the great equalizer that allowed Corey and Emma to kind of get back in it. Emma was playing really, really well. Corey actually made some really, really good shots. As much as I've been hard on him in this match review and in the previous match review, he made some really, really good shots in this match, and he actually took it to Dalbeer pretty good. They had a few shots at each other where they were picking each other off in the shoulder and stuff like that. So a little bit better of a showing, but like I said, the freeze was kind of the great equalizer that allowed the rollers to get back into it. The same thing with Chris and Leah versus Jessica and Jonas. It was a 15-14 win for the Smash, but the freeze allowed them to get back into it. It was just it was one of those things that realistically it like when you're watching the match, and if you and every once in a while during the broadcast the score would disappear, and if you weren't paying attention, you're kind of looking at it's like, okay, the Smash look like they're controlling this match the entire time. So the way that match went, the way I was watching it is that yeah, once the freeze locked in for the 14, then it allowed the teams to catch back up a little bit, and it's there's been a few cases of that throughout other matches throughout the whole Eastern split, but it's been pretty prevalent with some of the Northern Roller games. But yeah, so the Smash win that won the whole match 4-0. They finished the day 4-0 to kind of hold on to first place at least at the end of day one. And yeah, okay, let's move on to the next one. All right, so the other match I got to watch, there was a few technical difficulties on the Court 1 stream. There was a few times where it glitched a little bit and there was some delay in the video. But I did get to see most of the Rush versus the Wolverines match. So the Rush have Brett, who's the team owner. Normally they would have Nathan Choi playing for them, but Nathan couldn't make it to this one, so they brought in Sonny, who was the alternate, to play with to be the other male player. Then they had Alex, who's Angie's sister, and then they had Casey for to fill out the female side. So this was a really good match to watch. The Rush pulled out the win on the women's draw. It was a very very close match, very well fought. They did pick on Vicky a little bit, but Angie and Vicky managed to battle that a little bit better. But the Rush still pulled out the win. The next match where it was Brett and Sonny versus Hato and Joel. Once again, pretty close, but Hato and Joel pulled out, and I think once again it's just one of those things where they've played with each other so much that they were able to adapt and sync up a little bit better. When it came to the mixed matches, the Rush they took both of those matches. It was both of the matches were really good. They were all exciting, but the Rush pulled out and they ended up winning that match 3-1. I can't go into a lot of detail because of the glitching stuff, so there was a lot of the action we missed because of that. But going by Cam's commentary and stuff, which was still running through it, the matches were really, 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 really good. So the Rush. So for the end of day one, like I said, I did watch a bunch of the matches on Court 2. No commentary with that one. And it was, like I said, it was on the other channel, but still really, really good matches to watch. There's a couple matches that same thing went into that singles overtime. But on the end of day one, we had the Smash finishing 3-0 on the day. Sorry, 3-0 on the day, not 4-0. The Lions were 1-2. The Rollers were 0-3. Brewers were 1-2. West Coast Wolverines were 2-1. Toronto United was 1-2. Rush were 3-1, so they played 4, and so did the Prairie Pronghorns, and they finished day 2-2. Um, Lots of really good matches, and looking forward to day 2 coming up, and we'll get into that right away here. All right, moving on to day 2. So first game, day 2. Once again, I was watching the Court 1 stream just because it has the commentary and stuff like that. So we had the Wolverines versus the Lions. So first matchup was the men's. You had Hato and Joel again versus Eric and Cam. This was a really close game, actually. The game went 15-14 for the Wolverines. Cam played out of his mind for the Lions in this game. Like, he really kept them in it, but Hato and Joel pulled out the win in the end. Next, you had the women's come up, and then with Angie and Vicky versus Kim and Grace. Angie and Vicky won 15-12. They really, really picked on Grace in this match. Kim tried to assert herself in there to help Grace out a little bit, but Angie and Vicky were just picking their spots really, really well and pushing Grace off to the side and getting points out of it. Then moving on to the first mixed match, you had Eric and Grace versus Hato and Vic. So this was a switch up from the previous day where Hato was playing with Angie and Joel was playing with Vicky. This turned out to be a really, really good switch. It looked like Hato and Vicky had a lot more chemistry and they were reading each other really well. They really took over this game. They won 15-9, and once again picking on Grace. To the point where Eric started almost over poaching and putting himself out of position and missing quite a few shots on it. So, but props to Hato and Vicky, and props to the Wolverines for going with that change on the second day and just having at it. And then, so they were already up 3-0, so technically they had won the match, but they played the fourth game. This match, Joel and Angie versus Kim and Cam, was an insanely good back and forth match. Neither side really had an edge. It went to a 14-14 freeze, and Kim and Cam ended up pulling out the win. So they did get a one-set win for the Lions, but the Wolverines still won 3-1 for that one. All right, second game. We had the Brewers versus the Rollers. So Rollers still looking for a win at this point. They were 0-4 coming into this match. So they started off with the women's match. You had Christine and Susan again versus Emma and Jessica. Once this was a really, really good match. It looked like Jessica and Emma had started to find some more chemistry. They were the ones kind of holding the Rollers in games on the Saturday, but on the Sunday here, they really stepped up their game together. They managed to pull out the 15-14 win. This was a really good back and forth match. Emma and Jessica really focused their attempts on Susan and tried to stay away from Christina's forehand. And it was a really good back and forth match, and they pulled out the win. It was a really great win. Switching to the men. So the Rollers, they brought in Rob, who's their alternate, but he's also one of the other owners, and he played with Jonas on this one versus Mark and Jeff. Mark and Jeff just had their way with them, a 15-8 final score. They really picked on Jonas, actually really trying to get him into the soft game. From what I heard from the commentary, Jonas is a really good singles player, so I think the slowdown is where his little bit of weakness is. Rob seemed pretty good from first time seeing him. A lot more agile than what Corey is, and seemed to make better shots in this one. So decent switch with that, but still no match for Mark and Jeff. All right, then we went to the first mixed one. So you had Mark and Christina versus Emma and Jonas. Once again, Mark and Christina just dominated up. They got way too good of chemistry together. They were switching. They have Christina starting on the left because Mark has such a good backhand, and then they switched partway through the game to put Mark on the left. And as much as Emma and Jonas were fighting, it was still a 15-10 win for Mark and Christina. And once again, they were really pushing Jonas's backhand a lot. So I think they noticed a weakness there. And then the final match was Jeff and Susan versus Rob and Jessica. And the Rollers actually pulled out a win here to force the overtime. They won 15-9, and they extremely isolated Susan. Jeff couldn't get in, and once again, when you start doing that, it tends to pull the other player over to try and insert themselves into the rally. And um, Jeff was overreaching, then popping stuff up. Susan was popping stuff up. So 15-9 for Rob and Jessica. So a good showing for Rob in his first match. Um, and then went to singles, and I got a feeling that the breakout player for this weekend might end up being Jeff Elwood for the Brewers, because oh man, did he dominate Jonas in the singles. Brewers ended up winning 11-5 in the singles event. I don't think Jeff lost a point. He was just a dominating play. From what I heard, he comes from a tennis background, but even his play so far this weekend has been even a shock to the commentators and stuff who know the Eastern players a lot better. He's just been amazing. So Brewers win that one, 3-2. All right, on to the next one. All righty, for this game, we had Toronto United versus the Rollers again. So Rollers still looking for a win here. Toronto United trying to get their second win. So you had, starting with the women's, you had Hannah and Martina versus Emma and Jessica. And I don't know what was going on with Emma and Jessica in this game. They just couldn't get anything to work. Lots of net shots or out shots. Hannah and Martina seemed to be reading each other a lot better this game. And pretty convincing win with a 15-9 win on this one. Not much else to say about that one. Switching over to the men's, you had Daniel and Matt versus Corey and Rob. So this is what really threw me off this match. They sat Jonas. Like that's your first round pick, and you're bringing in two, like, and I don't mean to sound ageist about this, but two guys 50 plus to play against Matt Quanamoto, who's the highest ranked guy in Canada. And I know Daniel's the alternate for the United team, but still, like, just on the ability to move around alone, um, I don't see this as a smart decision making by the Rollers, and the score showed it, 15-8 for Daniel and Matt. It like an 8 was generous. Like if it wasn't for rally scoring, this might have been like a 15-2 game. There was just a few times where Daniel and Matt hit the ball out or made a mistake, but it was just utter domination this whole match. So I wasn't big on that switch up by the Rollers. Who knows? Maybe Jonas was battling an injury or something, and Corey, and then they got Corey and Rob to both step in for that. But if the Rollers keep planning on doing that, I don't foresee a win coming up here. All right, then we had the first mixed one was Daniel and Martina versus Corey and Emma. Corey and Emma pulled out the win, 15-12 on that. They really picked on Martina there. Daniel and Martina are both lefties, so they do like the opposite side stack for that. But Martina seemed to be having issues with her dinks. She was popping a lot of stuff up, and Emma and Corey were putting it away pretty well. So they still fought in it. It was only 15-12, but still, it seemed like an off game for Martina. Next, you had Matt and Hannah versus Rob and Jessica. This was a close match, 15-14 for Matt and Hannah win, but this once again, it's that freeze at 14 that kind of kept this match close. What I really noticed with Rob playing with Jessica is that I think Rob takes up a little bit too much of the court. Like I know in mix, a lot of times when you see the pro level players, you see the guys taking like 80% of the court and stuff like that. Like, and that's all good and fine for like someone like Ben Johns, who's young and super athletic and the number one player in the world. I don't think anyone's going to complain about him taking extra shots, but Jessica's already proven herself to be a very, very good player for this team. Her and Emma have been holding down the fort, and Rob coming in and really over poaching, putting himself out of position. There was like 2 or 3 times where he stepped in and took a ball that Jessica clearly could have taken, and Matt and Hannah ended up just making them pay for it. It's an issue when the commentator is talking about it during the broadcast. So yeah, I would like to see like Rob's seems to be very good. His placement shots are really well, but I'd like to see him step back a little bit more and have a little more faith in his teammates. So yeah, so TU pulls out the 3-1 win, and Rollers still without a win yet. All right, on to the next one. All right, we have the Rush versus the Brewers for this one. So Rush come in with one of the better records so far, and the Brewers, after a semi-rocky start in the first day, they've been on a tear a bit on Sunday here. So starting off the match, you had the women's, you had Alex and Casey versus Christina and Susan. Alex and Casey pulled out the 15-13 win. They were really picking on Susan in this one. Christina tried to counteract that with inserting herself in, but there's a few times she got caught over poaching a little bit and either was a little late to the ball, so she put it into the net or put it out or popped it up enough that Alex and Casey could finish it off. Alex has an insanely strong overhand smash, so the few times that when they popped it up, she just made them pay for it. So this was kind of like the first Rush match I got to watch like all the way through, just because of the glitch issues yesterday and with a lot of their other games being on court too. But really good showing for Alex and Casey with that one. All right, next we had the men's, and holy crap! Like I said on the last thing, Jeff Elwood might be the breakout player for this weekend. They were playing Brett and Sonny. Sonny being the alternate filling in for Nathan Choi, who wasn't able to come with Brett, and then versus Mark and Jeff, and 15-9 for Mark and Jeff. They've seemed to mesh together really well, and Jeff's just making insanely good shots. Mark's making insanely good shots. Like I didn't know enough about Jeff to when I kind of picked the Brewers as one of the top teams at the draft. But now after watching Jeff play, they got a really, if they can keep it together, they got a really good chance of competing for a top spot in this thing. So that ties the games at one game apiece. Going to the mix, Mark and Christina versus Brett and Alex. Mark and Christina dominated this one 15-8. You could see Brett was getting frustrated and stuff. He was missing some shots, which I don't think he normally misses, but the ability of Mark and Christina, just the way they play together, it's like I said in the previous podcast, the fact that they play together so much, they already have that built-in chemistry. They already know what each other is doing, so you don't see a lot of miscommunication. If anything, they're reacting to each other in sync. So they're going to be one of the tougher mixed couples to beat if they keep that grouping together. Then you had Sonny and Casey versus Jeff and Susan. This was an insanely good back and forth match. No team kind of giving an edge. It went to a 14-14 freeze. Sonny and Casey ended up pulling out the 15-14 win, forcing the singles playoff. And once again, Jeff Elwood. Apparently the commentator was hearing people chant MVP in the stands. He took Brett Forsyth's lunch money in the singles event there, and yeah, 11-5. So the Brewers come away with the 2-3 win. They keep it rolling with that one. All right, on to the next match. All right, so we had the Rush again versus the Toronto Smash. The Smash had were just coming off their first loss of the tournament. They had just lost the Wolverines over on court 2, so they were trying to get back to the win column. So you had, starting off with the women, you had Alex and Casey again versus Jordan and Leah. And I didn't know about this when I first was watching, but they mentioned on the commentary, Leah played for Canada in the Rogers Cup in tennis. So I was like, wow, she's got a really good backhand slice. Oh, well, no duh. Freaking former pro tennis player. So this was a super even match. Don't think at any point, or maybe only once, did a team have more than a 2-point lead. It went to a 14-14 freeze, and Alex and Casey ended up pulling out the win. But Jordan and Leah, like, nothing to be ashamed of with that match. That match was insanely good to watch. Then you had the men's, so Brett and Sonny versus Chris and Dalbier. Once again, another super close match. Went to a 14-14 freeze again, and this time the Smash came away with a 15-14 win, so that tied it at 1 win apiece. And yeah, not much to say about that game aside from super close. Same thing as the women's. No team really got up too high and pulled away. It was just super, super close all the way through. Then for the first mix, you had Brett and Alex versus Chris and Jordan. These matches were all close. Brett and Alex pulled out the 15-14 win. to go up with the 2-1. And then for the second match, you had Sonny and Casey versus Dalbeer and Leah. And once again, a 15-14 win for the Rush. Another super close match. Nobody was really getting picked on. Both teams were playing well, but the Rush come away with a 3-1 win. So the Rush are, I think, at this point when I'm doing this video, are in like first place. So we'll see how it keeps going. And then the Smash now have lost 2 in a row, so we'll see if they bounce back. All right, the next match, we got the Lions versus the Rollers. So one team with no wins, one team with only 1 win coming into this match. So both teams really fighting for a win here. So and the look at the starting lineup, it looks like they brought Jonas back in and Corey's out. So you got Rob is in there again. So it looks like he's taking Corey's place at least for the rest of this tournament on this team for the Rollers. So the first game, you had Kim and Cam, who've been solid, versus Rob and Jessica, who did have a good match the last time we watched, but they did Rob did overpoach a little bit. But Kim and Cam have played together a lot, and it showed. And a few mental mistakes by the Rollers in this. 15-9 for Kim and Cam to take the win. And I don't know what Rob was thinking, but he was trying to drive the ball at Kim Layton, and yeah, that's not the smart thing to do. Kim either can bash it right back down at you, and actually, but then the other thing was Kim probably pulled about 5 different times a matrix dodge on Rob, and his shot just sailed out. So, like, just with Rob trying to drive it at Kim, probably cost the Roilers about 6 or 7 points just in this one match alone. So, not the best idea to drive it at Kim Layton. Kim's way too good, and her reaction time is way too quick to try that stuff with her. And then Cam was doing really good with his drives that game as well. All right, second doubles match, you had Jonas and Emma versus Grace and Eric. I don't know what was up with Eric this game, but he was missing a lot of shots, and Jonas and Emma definitely took advantage of it. They had a 15-7 win, so kind of 2 blowout wins for each side in this one. I don't know if maybe it's the amount of games they've been playing that's maybe starting to wear Eric down. But no, yeah, he looked kind of off this entire match here, or this entire game entirely. So then we move on to the women's. They did it reverse order this time. They did the mixed first. Now they're doing the doubles. So Kim and Grace versus Jessica and Emma. Jessica and Emma did a really good job this game of picking on Grace, but you really, especially once they do the 8-point switch, you really saw Kim kind of take over this match. It was almost like watching a mixed game. Even the commentator commented on that Kim was coming in and taking probably about 70 to 80% of the court, and she basically willed this win. Great, and then it actually once Kim started making some of those shots, it gave Grace a little bit more confidence, and Grace had a few good putaways too. And they came away with the 15-13 win. But props to Emma and Jessica for pushing that game plan. But just once Kim adjusted to it and was able to insert herself into the rallies, they didn't really have an answer for her after that. And then final one for the men. So you had Rob and Jonas versus Cam and Eric. Rob and Jonas pull out a 15-11 win. Once again, Eric was kind of off. Cam was kind of off this one too. They had mentioned before on the broadcast that Cam sometimes is a little bit streaky with his shots, but I just noticed that one that this one that they were missing a lot. Rob did a good job picking on Eric a bit, and Jonas was making some really good shots this match too. All right, so that forced the singles overtime, but the Lions come away with a 3-2 win. They get their second win. The Rollers drop to 0-7. Only team without a win this weekend. So we'll get more into that in the final recap, but I don't know if they need to pick up another male alternate to help out, but the girls are doing their job on that team. So anyways, moving on to the next match. All right, final match of the day. We have the Toronto Smash versus the Lions. Lions coming off of that win versus the Rollers, so they're feeling good about themselves. The Smash, if they win this game, they would become the 4th team to finish with a 5-2 record. So a little bit of a bottleneck up the top there in the middle, but let's see how it goes. So starting off, I didn't understand this change by the Lions. They had just won a the win versus the rollers, and they switched up the mixed doubles. I don't know why they did this. Kim and Eric versus Dalbier and Jordan. Like, why all of a sudden after the whole weekend where Kim and Cam are playing really well, are you plugging Eric over there? And it showed 15-6 for Dalbier and Jordan. Like, I don't, I don't understand, don't understand the logic behind this thinking. Like, if anything for the Lions, the Kim and Cam combination has been one of their better combinations this whole weekend. So I don't know if they were trying to change things up, but I don't think this was the time to experiment. Well, I guess it could be the time because it's the last game of the split, but still, like, you want to still try and get some as many points as you can. So, and then in the next mixed match, Chris and Leah versus Cam and Grace, and same thing. Cam and Grace haven't played together all weekend, and it showed 15-11 for the smash, and that was with a freeze starting at like 14-9. So Chris and Leah made a couple mistakes, but it was almost like Cam was trying to do too much. Um, wasn't really trusting Grace enough. He was trying to speed up the balls way too much in in this game, but and a lot of them were going out or a lot of them were hitting the net. So um, I think the Lions will go back after this game and say, no, we need to keep Kim and Cam together. And I could see the possibility of maybe picking up a male alternate, even a female alternate as well, but a male alternate for Eric for maybe the back half of the next split coming up in Edmonton, just so he doesn't tire himself out. Like I said, this match he didn't look as tired, but the match before with the couple matches before that he played in, he was missing shots that he wasn't missing earlier in the weekend. So it might have been slowly getting to him. So all right, on to the mix. So we had or sorry, not the mix, the women's. Jordan and Leah versus Grace and Kim. Grace and Kim come away with the 15-12 win. This was a really, really good match. Seemed like Grace got out of her shell a little bit finally for this one. She had been very passive the whole weekend, but she got quite a few good smashes in this one, and Grace and Kim give the Lions a point on the board. Finishing off with Dalbier and Chris versus Cam and Eric, and the score says 15-12. You could tell this was the last game of the night. Lots of little mental mistakes by both teams, but Dalbier and Chris 15-12 for the win. So the Smash get the 3-1 win. They move to 5-2. Lions move to I believe it's 2-5. I think. I'll have to double check. I'll have to double check that for the recap, but probably not the way the two teams want to end off. Well, Smash are probably happy because they're 5-2, and I think that jumps them into first place. But that last match there for Dalbier and Chris and for Cam and Eric, they probably want a few shots in that one back. But overall, really entertaining match.
Potential gold medal point.
All right, so final recap, at least on the team and players side for the weekend. So final rankings: Smash finished 5-2, and they got the number one record with point differential or with set wins and losses differential. Wolverines coming up in second with also a 5-2 record. Rush right behind them with a 5-2 record, and the Brewers with a 5-2 record. So you got those four teams all jockeying for first place, and then Pronghorns bringing it up there in fifth with a 4-3 record, so a winning record, and they did that without Chapman. Lions and TU at 2-5 apiece, and then the Rollers 0-7. I'll start at the top and kind of work my way down with this. The Smash played really, really well. They showed up to play right off the hop. Jumped out into that 4-0 win, and then they only lost two, and then they won their last match. Yeah, they're a young team. I think the oldest player is Leah, and she's a former tennis pro. So they're going to be a really good team to watch. They seem to mesh together right off the hop really well. So after watching them play, no surprise that they're there. Just kind of nobody really had them picked because nobody really knew what to expect from this team. So great showing by them. Wolverines, they had a little bit of a rocky start on the Saturday, but that you can kind of chalk that up to jitters and a little bit of jet lag and stuff like that. But then they just went on a tear the next day. Same thing, finished with that 5-2. I do like the switch where they had Hato playing with Vicky and Joel playing with Angie. I think those combinations work better in the mixed setting. Joel and Hato as a pair are awesome. They play together all the time here on the West Coast. So and then Angie and Vicky by the end of the weekend were pretty well in sync there as well. So really good showing by them. The Rush, they played really really well. Shout out to Sunny who stepped in as an alternate there for Nathan Choi not being there. Then you had Alex and Casey bring up the side, and then Brett Forsyth, who's also the owner, playing really well. And the two games they lost, both of them went to overtime singles, where basically if most players specialize in doubles, so if you're not a singles regular, a lot of times it doesn't take long, especially in rally scoring, to fall behind. Brewers, Christina and Mark, that combination played insanely well the whole weekend. And then breakout player for the weekend has got to be Jeff Elwood. When you have the commentators saying, I didn't know he was this good, or how, like, constant commenting on how well he's playing, you had fans in the stands apparently chanting MVP for this guy. Insanely good to watch. They had a few little hiccups which cost them those two games, but they're going to be a force to reckon with for the rest of this season. Pronghorns 4-3 finish. That's very very good. Seeing how you didn't have your first round draft pick plan. Shout out to Ravi who stepped in as the alternate with that. And some really really good matches. Anytime it went to singles, Maddie on that team just dominated everybody. By far a singles specialist with him. Lions 2-5. There were some really close matches. One of those 5 losses, though, I'm gonna chalk that up to that weird switch where they took Kim Layton and Cam pair apart and put Eric over with Kim, and then Cam with Grace. It did not produce good results, and I don't know why you're doing that in one of the last games of the weekend. Especially after coming off of a win, it made no sense to me for doing that. My personal recommendation is, for them is I would get an alternate male. Not necessarily to replace. Eric's playing really well, but it looked like by the end of the weekend he was starting to gas out a bit. He was missing some shots. You could see him getting frustrated with himself. So even if you bring an alternate player on the team and then have them as, like, I don't know, Eric plays 3 games, the alternate goes in and plays 2 because you're playing 7, right? Just to give him that breather. Like, he is holding his own fairly well, but you could see by the end of it, it's starting to it looked, well, at least from my perspective, it looked like it was starting to get him. He was missing shots that he wasn't normally missing all weekend. But yeah, he started, and then, like I said, don't do that switch of keep Cam and Kim together. That duo was did very very well the whole weekend. So that one switch up cost them a possible win. Toronto United, same thing. They were playing with an alternate. They were playing with Daniel over his brother, what was the pick. Matt and Hannah played really really well there. They were probably one of the best mixed pairs there. But just a few little miscues. You could see Martina getting picked on a little bit, but she was slowly finding her rhythm as the weekend went on. And for a lot of these players, playing this many good players in a weekend is a rarity. Like, most of the time, you'll get 1 or 2 insanely good matches when you're in a tournament. But the constant level of players they were playing against this whole weekend, for some of them, was a shock. So then we come to the rollers, 0-7. So, and it's not the girls' fault. Jessica and Emma played really, really well. They were in every single women's match that they were in. They won quite a few of them. But Jonas was a little off the Saturday, but then, like, Corey and Rob are really good players. Like, they're better than me, but at some point, you like I think they need to bring a younger guy in there. And there's insanely lots of guys still available to pick from as an alternate for that team, but like they're both good players, but at some point, Father Time is winning this battle. Every other team, like I said, and I even said this for the Lions with Eric. Every other team, majority of almost all the men are sub 35. Like Jeff Elwood might be over 35. I don't know. He looks roughly the same age as me, and I'm going to be 36 this year. But everybody else is like sub 35. So like when you're 50 plus and you're giving up 15 years to someone who's younger, stronger, faster, even if they have the exact same skill set as you, you're going to wear out first. It's just that's how it works. And like it's their team, they can do what they want with it, but you want to see them do better than that. Like majority of the games they played in, with the exception of like when they played the Lions or when they played um, Toronto United, because those were fairly close games. Like when they played the Wolverines, it wasn't even close. When they played the Rush, it wasn't even close. Um, so it's just one of those things where I think they kind of need to reassess a little bit, and try to figure stuff out from there, because you don't want to go 0-14 in the inaugural season. Like that's going to be a record. You don't want to have that type of. You don't want to set a record that's going to be almost impossible to beat. Um, in future seasons, right? Like even if say this does really insanely well and they expand to like 12 teams like the Major League Pickleball in the States, you don't want to have that type of record on your team's thing. So starting off 0-7 is already really hard. So hopefully they can figure something out and make themselves a little bit more competitive, whether it's more drills or getting the team together for more practice so they can be a little bit more in sync. But that's going to be a tough hill to climb with the way those matches went. All right. So how did it look as from a viewer standpoint, especially online, seeing how I live in Alberta and I couldn't go watch this in person. Saturday, obviously, first day, um, had some glitches. From what I looked at when I glanced over to the court two stuff, a lot of the commercials were on there on day one, and not as many there. Um, but Sunday it was flowing like a well-oiled machine. I loved the thing where they were bringing players on as guest commentators. Even some of the alternates were coming in who weren't playing at all that weekend and were commentating. One of the highlight ones is by Fire Christina Chin. She's got insanely good charismatic personality. She was giving nicknames to players and stuff like that. So that was great. Big shout out to Cam, who was color commentating for like 9 hours straight each day, trying to come up with conversation. Also, big shout out for that with a lot of the coaching tips he gave out throughout watching. And I do love the fact that he did not pull any punches with players when they made a bad decision or if they were, not doing something that he didn't quite agree with. A lot of times when you watch professional sports, they try to be nice, and unless it's something very blatantly wrong, the commentators won't. They try to show no bias and stuff like that. Cam was like, "Oh, I don't like how they're standing there. I would like it if they were to push that a little bit further. I don't like. You don't want to do that. You don't want to make that shot. That's a bad choice." Like he was making these comments, and he is a pickleball coach, so it was nice to see that, and you were getting these tips and stuff while you were watching. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I loved bringing in the different players to come in and commentate throughout. And like I said, by the time Sunday rolled in, it was like a well-oiled machine. They had the commercial breaks popping in right when they needed to. It was very, very seamless. There was no glitches. They were like I loved the player interviews after the matches and stuff like that. Um, so I give a pass definitely for the Saturday because it's first day. You're uploading to YouTube. Um, Sometimes YouTube is a little bit hinky, especially with live. Um, so they clearly figured out what they needed to fix after Saturday was over, and then Sunday was basically very flawless. Would be awesome if, and I know this is probably the first year, so we're probably not going to happen. It'd be awesome if Court 2 could get some commentary, just because to add to the ambience of it. But overall, very, very good showing. I'm excited to see what they do in Edmonton. Hopefully, um, if nothing comes up work-wise, I can at least maybe get there for one day and actually watch some of it live. But until then, great show. I loved all the stuff with that. Oh, so actually one thing, if this might not be in the capability for this year, but instant replay, especially on some of the really, really good shots that were done there. I know that might not be within the budget or within the scheme right now to do, because you probably need to hire an extra hand for that. But that'd be the only other thing I'd add to the overall watch. The camera angles were all good. I loved both sides, being able to see both sides of the court when they'd switch back and forth. They had the at the net one when you're watching the dinking battles and stuff. So really, really great. Hope there's a really good turnout for the Edmonton one. That's going to be on the Labor Day weekend. And yeah, I'll see you guys on the next podcast. Me and Irene are heading to provincials in Red Deer in 2 weeks' time, so we'll get some matches in there, and I get to try out my new paddle for that. So until then, see you guys next time.
Left-handed. Oh, look at that. What a way to end it with an overhead smash. And not just an overhead smash, but a jumping overhead smash by Irene. So Irene and Andrew from East River, Alberta, gold medalists.